Thank you, Dr. Wigington, for that gracious introduction. You can never have too much prayer, am I right? This morning, the title of my sermon is going to be called Going All Out, Learning to be Comfortable in Your Discomfort. We'll be in John chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. That'll be my main focus. However, I will not be reaching that quite yet. But if you want to turn there and be proactive, I encourage you to do so. Tom O'Neill once wrote about history's greatest man ever. He awoke one early morning at the ashram, as he did every day, and he led a prayer morning by the Sombrati River. This man, dressed in a long loincloth or a dhoti, wore a shawl around his shoulders, and grasped his bamboo staff, and left the compound of which he had resided for 13 years. This man would not be returning, and he left a place that had attained to his precepts of higher thinking as well as plain living. This man was an oppressed person. He was under the rule of a country that did what many other great countries did at that time. They were colonizing them, thinking that other countries and other places were arrogant, and they needed to teach them the ways of the right. This man wanted to bring about change. He saw that another colony that was under the British Empire had broke away and has now become the United States of America, which we all reside in currently. But he wanted to go about this revolution in a totally different aspect. He wanted to go through it with civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is the professed nature to disobey the laws and the government itself, but to do it in a peaceful manner, with no violence or bloodshed. For those of you who haven't figured out yet, this man is Mahatma Gandhi. He led his country, India, to a great revolution and great independence. However, there was a man much greater than he who resided several years before Gandhi even showed up. This man had a ministry for approximately 3 years, and within those 3 years, he left amazing people to share and proclaim the gospel. This man, of course, is Jesus Christ, whom we all know and love and that we're here to talk about. He left these people whom he instructed, these apostles, who created many of the New Testament where we get plenty of our doctrine. You see, Jesus went all out, and going all out, what does it mean? Will it hurt? Will it require change? How do I even go all out? We see that through Jesus' life, he went all out. That's why many of us here are here today. That's why, in fact, we can do Academy of Preachers right now. He went all out and left nothing left on the plate. You see, for us, we're what the New Testament calls Gentiles, meaning we're not from Israelite lineage. Jesus really didn't have to. He could have stuck with what was comfortable and preached in the synagogues and, well, been a Pharisee or a Sadducee, but we see that Jesus took a different route. This morning, we'll be looking at an example of a time in Jesus' life in which he went all out and was a radical individual. This passage is, again, in John chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to the town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away from the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" In this passage, it raises my question, are you going all out or are you living what's comfortable in your life? We notice here that the Pharisees had learned that Jesus had more disciples than John the Baptist. However, in a sense, this was not accurately true. A lot of the times, the Pharisees and Sadducees had people within Jesus' group that would tell them whatever they wanted to hear, really. We notice here that despite that, Jesus had decided that it'd be best for him if he left Judea, knowing that there was a great opposition against him, and left for Galilee. However, we also see in this part that John kind of emphasizes that Jesus had to go through Samaria, that there was no other way for him. But in fact, if we know actually, Jesus could have gone many different routes. He could have gone through Samaria. He could have gone around through boat. He could have gone around through horse or donkey. You see, this brings up kind of my first of 3 points. In order for us to go all out, we're going to have to go through difficult circumstances. I mean, again, to say this, Jesus could have gone around to get to Galilee, but he didn't. You see, the Samaritans and the Jewish people really didn't get along, so for Jesus to go through Samaria is a huge thing, and I think we read over it too many times. Imagine if you lived your whole life never really going through anything. You kind of just sat around and twiddled your thumbs and, you just kind of ran away from any problem that you faced. You see, you wouldn't have any knowledge or wisdom that you do now. In fact, you wouldn't be the person you are right now sitting in front of me. Your ministry would also be very dull. I wouldn't want to be in front of a preacher who never experienced anything. It's just kind of boring. For me, this past summer, and including this current summer, I'm going to have the opportunity to do something that's totally out of my comfort zone. And I was given two options. I either go with it, or I simply just back away and do what's comfortable for me. Honestly, I chose the first option. I decided, hey, why not? If this is what Lord has called me to do, he's going to do it. And I got to show up, and I got to be obedient to his call. You see, in order for me to do this, though, I had to rely on the Lord. And in doing so, I'm going to be stretched. I'm going to be able to reach the lost. My ministry is going to grow fruitful. I'm going to have many experiences to relate to youth or other congregates. As Jesus went through Samaria, we too should not shy away from it. We should not shy away from going through difficult circumstances, but we should not go looking for them. What I mean by that is both the favorable and unfavorable are something we should be praising the Lord for, no matter what we're going through or no matter what's going on. In verse 7, we see that a woman came to draw water from the well. If we keep looking at verse 7, we see that Jesus spoke to her. However, it's her response in verse 9 that really kind of sets the stage for why this is important. Jesus is a man, a Jewish man, and the woman is a Samaritan woman. These two never really intermingle because of their history together. Jewish people typically had no dealings with Samaritans. In fact, a lot of the times, if they were to lodge them or eat or drink with them, they'd really be disgusted and kind of not want to do that. Therefore, my second point is, in order for us to go all out, we have to be countercultural. It's just what we got to do. Like I said, I can't emphasize this enough. Jesus is a Jewish man speaking to a Samaritan woman. And to me, the Samaritan woman is like us. She's like you, and she's like me. When she is asked to give Jesus water from the well, many of times she's shocked and I'm sure terrified. Just like we are when Jesus says, hey, Ruari, I want you to go do this thing with a bunch of people you don't know. I want you to be able to give your first sermon in front of a bunch of people that, again, you don't fully know yet. And I was terrified and was like, God, why me? I'm not anything different than the person to my left or my right. In fact, I'm not even the best Christian in the world. But we see that despite this, the Samaritan woman still gives him water. You see, for us, this doesn't make a lot of sense why Jesus and a Samaritan is so significant. The only way I can really paint it for you is during the Civil Rights Movement. Many Caucasians and African Americans were treated very poorly if they spoke to one another or treated each other like equals. You see, we need to do things for the Lord that our societies would deem abnormal. February 1st, 1960 sparked a tremendous time for the Civil Rights Movement. You see, we saw youth and young adults get active in this movement. We saw 4 African-American college students go into a cafe that they were not welcomed at, sitting at a spot that many others would not have expected them to sit at. No, they did not disrupt the flow of how the service was going. In fact, many times they just sat there and ordered coffee, drinking from it. In fact, later on, after this, they had many people from their college and those from their community joining them. No, the people joining them were not just African Americans. We had many Caucasians joining them too, and other minorities. It was really kind of a spectacular moment. For many of us, though, we got saved, and we decided to continue furthering our salvation. That's not a problem. In fact, I encourage it. However, what we have done is we've brought the normality of the former life into our Christian walk. We have let the normality of that life control us and stop us from doing what the Lord has commanded us to do. And so instead, we need to smash through it. Either whether you're going to do that through sitting silent, through something that you know you have to bite your tongue, whether you're going to break through that normality and come out of it being weird and abnormal. You see, are you going to be ruled by legalism or by obedience to the Lord is what it simply boils down to. Finally, in the second part of verse 6, we see that Jesus sat on the well. Jesus sat on the well. This is a part that many of us just kind of skip over and we kind of really don't focus on it. We think, oh, that's nice, John, thanks for including this, but I'm going to continue reading the rest of chapter 4 and see what Jesus did. But this implies that Jesus was traveling. He was traveling a great distance, probably thousands of miles, covered in dust, sand, and likely camel manure or other types of poop. I mean, it's just real. And he sat on the well looking tired. He asked for the woman, therefore, to give him water. Ask does not do it justice. He begged as a beggar or as a person who had no means of doing this. He was the Lord. Why did he need to do this? I mean, he could have simply taken the dust and crafted it into a pot and filled it with water. Or he could have simply commanded the woman to just give him water. Instead, we see that Jesus humbled himself, as he did many of times throughout his life. So therefore, it brings up my third point to you, which is, in order for us to go all out, we must humble ourselves just as Jesus did. Sorry. Going all out is important, but if we do it with an ego, then there's no point of us doing it. We can't think that we're better than our brothers and sisters who are both lost and saved. There are many times yesterday that I was thinking, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not the best speaker. In fact, there are many times where I'm kind of just looking down at my notes, kind of nervous and fidgety. I couldn't even eat breakfast this morning. I was so nervous. Meanwhile, other people got up, and they made it seem like they were such an eloquent speaker and that they had no issues with this at all. I know Academy of Preachers is by no means a competition, but it certainly felt that way to an extent to me. But you see, that's not the case. We're all preachers of a different variety, all with a different style, and we must humble ourselves. We see that throughout Jesus' life, he stated that in order for the first must be last, and the last will be first. Jesus told his disciples he came not to be served, but to serve. At my college, our motto is servant leadership, and well, I think a lot of the students, in fact, a lot of the faculty live this out. I mean, of course, they all do their best to. We're all busy college students and professors. The professors will treat many of us college students as equals, eating and sitting with us and taking time out of their busy schedule to do and serve with us as much as they can. Our students exemplify that perfectly as well. A lot of the times, they will give themselves up despite stress and anxiety and wanting to study. They'll treat each other out to dinner despite not having a lot of cash. I think it's pretty awesome. As Paul stated in 1 Corinthians 9:22, to the weak I became weak that I might win the weak. This is Paul, who persecuted the church. He said that we should humble ourselves and become like those we are trying to reach. My final point does not come from John chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. This can be seen in Matthew chapter 27, verses 32 to 55. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read that all. You guys can read it if you want. But it's kind of the death of our Lord and what all went on. Yes, that's right. My final point is that going all out may require us to leave this very earth for the gospel. I mean, we see that Jesus did it. He gained so much opposition and then allowed that opposition to consume him in order for him to fulfill what the Old Testament prophets had fulfilled, what God, his Father, had set out for his one and only begotten Son. I understand that most of us here probably aren't going to go out and die. We're probably not going to go and die on the mission field or anything like that, but it's a fact that we all need to be aware of, that many of the times too many preachers are too afraid to say, hey guys, listen, you're probably going to die for the gospel. And we need to acknowledge that. There are brothers and sisters overseas who are dying for this faith, who are forced to be underground, who must look over their shoulders because they are afraid that the person they said I love you to and kiss goodnight might turn them into the authorities. You see, here in America, we don't really understand that persecution because maybe we'll get a few nasty words or rejection from a few loved ones, but we really don't understand what it's like to fully be persecuted. So you see, Gandhi did not expect the results he did. Jesus, in fact, did not think that 2,000 years later there'd be an event called Academy of Preachers in which the theme is him, about him and all of the different characteristics of Jesus. He didn't expect that. He probably didn't even want that at first. But you see, we have this amazing love for Jesus, and that's why we're all here. So I challenge you as you go out to be a black sheep amongst the flock, to be a sheep amongst wolves. But I want to put a twist to that. What I mean is I challenge you to be different from the person to your left or to your right. I want you to be Jesus amongst those who would rather have you dead. Thank you for your time.